Okay. Well, we're on live now, and unfortunately, folks, we can't. In fact, I'm going to hang you up, Angela, because it's creating echo. Oh, you can hear me, right? Okay. Unfortunately, we can't get audio from Angela for today's broadcast on flirting. Uh, if anyone has any ideas about how we could get Angela's audio, she seems frozen currently on video too. We've been struggling here for about 15 minutes. Can you hear me, Angela? Hello? I don't even know if she can hear me, and her face is just totally frozen on the screen. So I think what I'm going to do is just end today's broadcast and apologize for that, and we'll reschedule with Angela on flirting. And I was really looking forward to it because Angela's got awesome material. And next week we're going to have Kyle Jones. Are you available next week, Angela? Well, you can't even hear me, and vice versa. So we'll either have Angela next week, or I'll be with Kyle Jones next week again on flirting. The whole idea behind this is that there's two levels to intimacy, really. One, which I've been talking about with Jill Levitt and Mike Christensen, has to do with how to develop close, loving relationships when you're in conflict with somebody, how to receive criticism, how to give criticism, and we had many more really cool topics along those lines. But what if you don't have anyone to have a conflict with? Then that's where flirting and dating strategies are very important. And when I was in clinical practice, 60% of my patients were not involved in intimate relationships, and they found very valuable the flirting training, the dating strategies, how to develop dating relationships with a lot of people, and at any rate, that's what I was gonna bring you here. Lisa, you're asking some questions. Angela, can you hear? I see Angela now. Lisa Kelly says, try starting over. So here's Angela again, and I'll bring her up into the show. Oh, I can hear you now, Angela.
Hi. Hi. That's amazing.
Who is that?
I'm so happy.
Oh, that's you.
So
okay. How did you get it to work, Angela? Huh?
Well, there was a setting I missed when I got on that it said connect camera, and then I noticed if I clicked the setting button, it gave me an option to play with the audio. So I'm so sorry. I guess that was totally my fault. I'm not stellar at all these things, but I'm really excited. Looks like this will work out.
Well, awesome. That we got off to a rugged, horrible start, and so the rest can't help but be 1,000 times better. Let me introduce my dear friend and beloved, esteemed colleague, Dr. Angela Crum. Angela is the clinical director of the Feeling Good Institute in Mountain View, and has been a long-time member of the Tuesday group, except a few years later she went with Maura Katz and Jill Levitt and several other dear colleagues to form the actual brick and mortars Feeling Good Institute. For years, to have a Feeling Good Institute was just a fantasy in my mind, and now it's a reality. And Angela has graciously agreed to join us today to talk about, I think, an incredibly important topic, which usually isn't covered in psychiatric residency training programs or clinical psychology programs. And the reason I think it's so important is because I was raised as a minister's son, and I was taught that you're just supposed to be real polite to everyone and real serious. And I discovered that mindset was not at all effective in dating. And I got nothing but shot down over and over and over again, and eventually I met a fellow named Michael. I won't say his last name, but he was just wildly successful in the dating arena. He kind of took me under his arm and taught me the ropes, and it was really a life-changing experience. And I skipped a lot of medical school classes to go out hustling with Michael, and I had amazing adventures, some of which I wrote about in my book, Intimate Connections, although it's very, very toned down. My editor said it was way too wild and it would ruin my reputation, so I kind of revised the book. But with no further ado, let me introduce Angela, and we'll dive in. Now, we're going to go ahead and present. Angela's going to present some really cool topics on flirting. Type in your questions, and then 15 minutes before the end of today's show, we'll take your questions. But hello, Yehuda. Hello, John Pera. Bernie, thank you, and for your wonderful email earlier. Bernie and Phil, hello, and Lisa, thank you for being here, supporting us, cheering us on. Veronica and Rob de Gregorio, my number one fan in the whole world, and that's who I'm devoting my new book, Feeling Great, to, is Rob de Gregorio, and the other person I'm dedicating it to is my beloved late cat, Obi Burns. So take it away, Angela. Hello.
Okay, awesome. Okay. I also will add my hellos and thank yous to all those folks and everyone else. Yeah, as David mentioned, I think we're going to try to keep most of the Q&A towards the end because we've gotten some feedback that maybe it's a little distracting when we're making some talking points and then bouncing off the comments. So we'll see. I don't know that we'll contain ourselves entirely if there's something that feels really relevant, but we'll kind of do our best with that. But I'm super excited to join you all today. I also feel a little nervous. I just like to share that with folks when that's real for me. It's a new platform to do the Facebook Live for me. And I always feel a little silly when people see me as a flirting expert. It used to just feel like awesome when people would say that. And now I've been married about, I don't know, 7
years?
Yeah, something like that. No, it's much less than that, 6 or 7 years. I have 2 little kids, and and when folks will say that, I feel a little silly. Like at first I always have the thought of, oh, I'm out of practice. And then actually I remember that I do still flirt all the time because I think of flirting as really just advanced social skills that we use to connect with folks, with any people, whether we're interested in them intimately or not. So last night I was at a party for my niece's middle school graduation and didn't know very many people there because it was her friends' parents. And I said to my husband as we walked in the door, I was like, oh, here's an opportunity to do my flirting skills. And at the end of the night, my sister-in-law says to me, thank you so much. You kept that party going because no one knew each other and it was so awkward. And I kind of laughed and thought, yeah, that's a good reminder that even for those of you today who may be thinking, oh, I don't need to flirt. I'm too old, or I'm too X, or I'm too Y, whatever your reasons are. The truth is we connect with people when we use some of these skills and we meet new people and we engage and we learn to go deeper. So I hope you can think with us today kind of broadly about the application, even though most of the examples I will use are really related to kind of the intimacy building when we think of more classic flirting. So maybe, I mentioned to David that I'd love to share a little bit about kind of why am I the person talking about this today? I was a clinician who always enjoyed treating all of the social anxiety spectrum types of struggles. So I always enjoyed social skills training, shyness, social anxiety. And so I'd always been someone who enjoyed learning and practicing these skills. And I actually had been, I would say that in like high school and college, I was a particularly bad flirter. David talks about being raised as a minister's son. We have that in common. I was raised as a minister's daughter, actually, and definitely didn't have training in any of this. And as I look back, if I have any, high school friends watching this today, they're probably laughing at the idea of me teaching this because I think the best I did was to like follow around boys who I liked and hope they would eventually pay attention to me. It was sweet, I'm sure. Like, I was probably likable enough. I was like a nice girl and maybe a little fun here and there, but mostly I was way too serious. And I had this theory that if I just was around them enough, they would decide they liked me. So I remember this one guy who was a couple years older than me in my older sister's class, and I would constantly ask him for a ride home because I was so convinced that if he just hung out with me enough, he would like me. And of course, all I was doing was like annoying the crap out of this guy who really didn't want to be driving this little freshman home, and wasn't interested. And I had no idea that like the chasing behaviors that I was engaging in, this idea of follow them around until they decide you're cool, was not cool at all, and was actually following what we believe very strongly in Team CBT, is that when we chase someone in any way, we force them to run away from us. So given that, I had a lot to learn. And to be honest, college wasn't much better. I can think of examples where I had a similar pattern of, being interested in someone and just becoming overly present in their lives. Like if I showed up enough in their spaces thinking that would work. So it took much later in life. I actually, most folks within the Team CBT community know that I then was married young and then divorced young. And that was my turnaround point, because the divorce was, I was actively attending the Tuesday group, and David and I were having a lot of conversations about my own insecurities, about whether I could get out there again, right? And what would it mean to be this woman who was just divorced, and how would I find people to date and to be interested in. And so, of course, I was reading David's amazing book, Intimate Connections, and I've teased him relentlessly. It's pretty dated. There are examples in the book of taking out ads in newspapers. So, we can all have a good chuckle at that being a little dated.
It's dated. I'm not dated, but my book is dated.
Not you, David. You're perfectly hip and up to date. But yeah, we can all agree that we aren't taking out classifieds. But, the application is the same of the book, right? So you take out the ad in the newspaper with swipe right or left on Tinder, and the concepts are the same, right? And one of the primary concepts that we'll talk about today, and is really the spirit of our approach to inviting people to connect with you and be close to you, is this concept of not chasing people, right? Is being able to be someone who can put out some confident energy, whether you're faking it or not, but not give in to the chase that we do when we feel the desperation to hold on to someone, right? And so you'll hear, as we talk about the skills, the theme of how do you not chase but still engage and remain open to connection? And I'll use lots of fun examples from that period then after my divorce, where I was single, and not only was I reading Intimate Connections, but I was talking in the Tuesday group about these themes and these skills. Jacob Towery, a psychiatrist in the Bay Area here with us, also was working with us on these skills as well. And really the energy just started growing to this idea of like, let's get really good at this stuff. Let's figure it out. And then let's figure out how to teach it to other people, right? So I enjoy both training other therapists in how to do this, as well as teaching clients how to do it, right? And again, clients not only who are wanting an intimate relationship, but clients who maybe just need friendships, right? They need these skills to just develop a new friend, right? And to build from there. So that's kind of like, I guess, the background I wanted to share. David, I'll be quiet for a minute and see what thoughts or reactions you have to that before we start to look at some of the specific skills that we'd be discussing.
Well, I'm in 200% agreement with what you've said so far. So let's forge ahead. I was also very nerdy when I was in medical school. I was still very nerdy, and there was this fellow. I would live in different houses, rented houses in Menlo Park or Palo Alto or various places, and there was this really neat guy. I think he was about 19, named Jeff Evans, he was living in the garage behind one of the houses I was renting. He called himself Spider, and he played the drums. He was a really good-looking, cool guy, but I was incredibly nerdy, and he was incredibly shy. And so one day I just decided to not go to medical school classes for 2 weeks, and he and I just decided to go around asking women for dates. And he was as much as a loser as I was. I mean, he wasn't a loser. He was really a handsome, cool, awesome, neat guy. He was a drummer, but he was just very kind of insecure and nerdy, as I was. And so we walked up took turns. I'd say, like, go and see if you can get her phone number. And then he'd say, go and see if you can get her phone number. We walked around Palo Alto and New York for 2 weeks, and we each got rejected about 200 times in a row. And we'd have 0 successes, but it was helpful. And now I call that rejection practice, is getting over your fear of being rejected. But I came from that same background, that there's an art form to flirting, to dating, and to having people chase you rather than you chasing other people. In fact, once I was on walking across the Stanford campus, and this bearded guy came up and bumped into me. I'd never seen him before. And he says, you know your problem? And I said, no, what's my problem? And he says, you're always trying to grab the universe, and it's always going to keep running away from you. And you won't, your dreams won't come true until you learn to kind of sit with open hands and let the universe chase you. Wow. And then he walked off. But it was so true what he was saying.
That's awesome. Yeah, so both of us are kind of, definitely on board with that idea that we have to figure out how to engage without giving into that chase that was so present for me, at least, when I was first trying these skills. So I thought, David, maybe we could start with just a little bit of thinking about some of the resistance issues that comes up for folks when we're teaching flirting skills.
Sure.
Because just like, with anything we do within team therapy, we're never going to succeed if we're just throwing methods at people, right? And I definitely know this to be the case because there's a couple people in my personal life who I think are doing it all wrong with the flirting. And I notice once in a while I'll make some suggestions and they just kind of balk at them. There's this sense of like, I wouldn't do that. It's so fake, or it's so ingenuine, or that's not me. And each time it's so obvious. I don't have an agenda with these folks, meaning in team language, I haven't worked through all the good reasons not to use these behaviors, right? And so it's a reminder to all of us, whether you're a therapist or someone else watching today, that there are a lot of good reasons not to learn these types of skills, right? To avoid it. And I thought maybe in the chat box, folks could share some reasons now that come up for them. David, maybe you can help me with the multitasking if there's any you want to read out loud. But I think there's one kind of main one I hear most often from the clients that I work with. But I'm wondering if others can throw out some ideas they might have. What would be good reasons not to try new flirting skills? Why would you not want that? Or even what good things might it say about you that you're someone who doesn't want to have to see flirting as a skill you have to build?
Well, I know one that I heard all the time when I was in practice, just to get the people on the list warmed up. By the way, 2 people on the list are saying that you look beautiful.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love it.
You think they're flirting with you? I bet they are. One I had patients, particularly I got this from male patients more than from female patients.
Oh, but, wait, David, did we get shut down for a minute? Lisa just said we'll be on momentarily. Is that...
No, I don't know. We're on now. Okay. Maybe that was old earlier in the broadcast. Okay. Yeah, but Adara says you'll feel stupid. Erica says I will be shamed. Oh, here's my little flirty kitty, Misty, or little kitty. She comes up, she flirts with me. This is what you're going to explain about rubbing up against my legs, and then she runs off. So she's unavailable. So I have to chase her. She's
hard to get.
Jason says, I think she's beautiful.
Oh, that's my husband is on here now. That's
Jason.
Horrific.
Oh my goodness. Well, you see, the flirting works, because I can tell you that
I'm blushing that he got on here. I'm so embarrassed.
Is a handsome hunk.
He's pretty cute.
He's awesomely good looking, muscular guy, and a really nice, smart, neat guy. So what Angela's going to teach you here today works. Bernie says, I'm afraid of offending others, and I have a rejection phobia. So you need my rejection practice, Bernie. Let's see if there's others. Somebody says, loves your energy, love the stories. Jonathan says, you know how uncomfortable it is? Oh man, if a girl likes me and realizes I don't know what I'm doing, it'll be too scary. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one I got all the time when I was in practice is I had these guys that looked like crap. I hate to say it, they dress shabby, they look shabby. And then I was saying, you need to change the way you look and change the way you communicate with women. And sometimes you have to play the game a little bit when you're getting to know someone. And then they would say, oh no, I don't want to be a phony. Women should like me the way I am.
Right.
And then I said, why should they like you the way you are? You look like shit. Excuse me. You had to have a good relationship with a patient to say that. And then I would send them to this woman at the King of Prussia Mall, Kaniko Finkelstein, who I met, who worked in Bloomingdale's, and she was Philadelphia's top fashion expert. She was a super genius. And I would say, if you want me to help you with your flirting with women and turn your love life from rags to riches, then you have to go and make an appointment and go see Kaniko Finkelstein in the men's department of the Bloomingdale's and tell her Dr. Burns referred you for a sex uniform. And she will dress you in the most beautiful clothing. She's going to pick out everything, a totally integrated outfit. She'll pick out your underpants, your socks, your shoes, your pants, your belt, your shirt, your vest, everything. And she'll turn you into a male lollipop. And I think that's one of the first things you were going to comment on is your appearance. But one of the resistance things was women should like me the way I am.
Yeah, right.
I shouldn't have to change.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that's the one, David, that you just nailed, the kind of the main one I hear. And it maybe not as specifically just about what folks are wearing, but the idea that we shouldn't have to change anything about ourselves to find a loving partner. And I actually, there's a huge part of me that agrees with that wholeheartedly. I want folks, and I will talk with clients and therapists about the idea that I absolutely want them to be themselves, right? I am not in the business of making you someone different. This isn't like in the movies where you see a flirting coach who's going to revamp you and make you lie and be someone you're not. But there is a truth that there's something a little naive of us, or maybe even kind of that ego coming up if we think that we shouldn't have to try at all. Right. And a lot of folks will fall into that camp. I shouldn't have to do anything. And then really what that means is they have a very passive sense of waiting for the ideal partner to magically show up on their doorstep and ring the doorbell and, welcome you with loving arms without you putting any effort out there. So I'm a big fan of saying, great, we don't have to change who we are at the core, but everything in life that has a lot of value often takes a little risk, right? It takes putting ourselves out there. And so, with all of you who are listening today, if you strongly believe you shouldn't have to do anything, then that's okay. Then these aren't the right skills for you, right? And David and I can sit with open hands. We don't need to try to convince you today or chase you to get you to try these things. And we don't want you to chase your clients and try to convince them. We want you to actually do the opposite, like we talk about in team therapy, of sitting with open hands and let folks decide if they want this. So what we'll do next is I'll run you through some of my favorite tips. We won't get to all of them. Over time, there's a list that I've sort of honed in on that pull from intimate connections and from other conversations in the team community that turned into like 13 skills. And when I sit down with a client, I'll hand them that list and have them decide which might feel like a good fit for them, right? It's not a kind of black and white concept that everyone needs to do the same thing, but more of an attitude of, hey, these are things that could be helpful to you. Let's look at which ones you might want to try to implement into your skill set, and we'll go from there. So I'll hit you with a few of my favorites today, and then again, I want to make sure we save some time for practice. Does that feel okay, David, if I jump?
Just say real quick here, people came up with a lot more resistances, and I need to get in shape first. One woman said, I'll look like a Jezebel. They'll think I'm shameless if I go around flirting. Julie says it seems manipulative.
Yep.
All of these, you're doing a good job, people. And then two asked, is Kaneko Finkelstein still there? I would go check it out. Two people from Philadelphia asked, and if she's still there, tell her I still love her, and I'm still talking about her 25 years later, because she is a Mozart of fabric and clothing. Anyway, back to you, Angela.
Awesome. Yeah, but the truth is that people probably know this. I'm probably stating the obvious, but most department stores will do the same for you. You don't need this amazing woman. There's amazing people at every store and every boutique. They work on commission. They'd love to help you find things that look good and be excited about it, right? But so let's look at some of the ones that I think are most important and ones that really are super important for meeting people in general. So there's two I'll tell you about that I often have clients practice as a pair. One we call false time constraints, and the other we call creating openers. Right. So false time constraints, I'll talk about. That's one we'll talk about. And then openers. Okay. And let me tell you a little story first, and then we'll see if we can pick out the skills from within the story. I think this was one of my most artful moments. I've told you some bad ones. Now here comes one I feel really proud of. So there was a girlfriend of mine from Indiana who when after my divorce used to come out and visit me all the time. And she also was single at the time. And I think having a partner in crime is awesome. So if you don't have anyone to go flirt with, think about using these skills first to increase your friend network, right? Then see that as step one, ease in, right? And then the flirting will get easier if you have some partners to just go out with, right? And be in public spaces. So this friend and I had a lot of fun. We were playing with these techniques. We were going in with a lighthearted attitude of not feeling attached to the outcome. As David talked about, we were willing to be rejected, so there wasn't a lot of stakes at stake. We were just interested in being playful and having conversations. So one night we were in a bar and she saw these two guys walk in who were totally her type, right? And not everyone has a type. This friend of mine happened to have a certain type of man she found very attractive and was very interested in. So they walked in and there was a lot of people in this bar, and we both had the thought of like, it'd be kind of hard to get their attention because they were pretty attractive. My guess is they could have had their pickings of the room. So I thought about this idea of the false time constraint and the opener and said, well, just let's go walk with me and let's head towards the bathroom and let's see what happens. And she's like, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm not sure yet, but let's, follow me and let's see what happens here. So we walk up in front of these guys and I just paused right in front of them. And my opener was, I just gave you the answer. I told you had to pull out the skills. I'm helping you too much. But my opener was something like, hey, could you guys just pretend to talk to us for a minute? Now, of course, I have their attention because what does that mean to pretend to talk to someone, right? So it definitely pulled their attention. They start going, what do you mean? It's like, we just need a minute. Okay, just give me a second. Just stand here and you don't even have to say anything. Just kind of nod your head a little bit. And I'm kind of looking over my shoulder like I'm checking out something going on behind me, right? And now they're really intrigued because they're like, what's going on here? And my friend's just starting to like giggle, kind of nervous, laughing. She doesn't know what's going on either. And so finally they're like pushing me for an answer. And I say something like, oh, we just need you to be kind of a decoy. We were kind of caught up with this awkward conversation. We needed to get away. So it's probably enough. We're probably safe now. We could move on, right? And of course they're like, no, because now they're really intrigued, right? So now they're leading the conversation and I'm kind of off the hook, right? So they're going, well, who were you talking to? What was going on? And suddenly we have this really humorous conversation ensuing. I'd made the whole thing up. There was no one we had to get away from. But what I'd done is created an opener, just a way to open up a conversation with the false time constraint. Right? So the false time constraint part is saying, I just need a moment, right? And think for a minute, why is that appealing in a flirting situation? Because maybe your gut says, oh, I want to sit down and have a 2-hour in-depth, deep, meaningful conversation with this person. So why would Angela be suggest it's going to be just a minute, right? What is that that's appealing? The answer, as you think about it, is something along the lines of it's low pressure for them. Right? They don't feel wrapped in, and it has the spirit of that chase because I convey a willingness to walk away. right? My saying, I just need a minute, I'm just kind of using you even for a minute to get away from something else, made it playful and fun. And the stakes were low for them. They didn't have to figure out how to get out of this conversation because I had already mentioned, I just need a minute of your time, right? So false time constraints, I teach to clients, even if we're walking down the street. Let's say you're going to ask someone, you see someone you're attracted to and you're walking down the street of your little downtown, wherever you live. And an opener might be to ask for a recommendation, right? To say something like, oh, I was hoping to get some coffee. Do you have a place you like around here? We can add the false time constraint by saying, do you have just a minute? Or, oh, I just need a second of your time, right? And what that does is it helps folks to engage with you without feeling trapped. Does that make sense? So those are two of my favorites, false time constraint and openers. David, what do you think about those? What are your reactions to that example or hearing about those two skills?
Yeah, that's super. I'll let you keep talking. I can always give more examples, but you've got so much great information to convey. That sounds great. What do you say to the person who says, "Oh, that's fake. I don't want to give some fake, technique like this"?
Yeah, it was fake. That was a totally made up one and it rocked. Like it totally worked. My friend was so excited. We ended up hanging out with them all night. Like we actually couldn't get rid of them then, later, but she had a lot of fun with them. And we went to like 2 or 3 other spots with them that evening. And, she stayed in touch with one of the guys. It was fine. So yeah, I totally lied that time. And I don't usually advocate lying, but occasionally it's one of those moments of like, well, really, what's the harm in that? It was just playful and silly. But for folks where it feels important to never be fake, which is fine, I respect that, find something genuine that creates an opener, right? So again, I mentioned asking for recommendations is like a really simple, common social skill that we teach folks, whether they're trying to flirt or just get over social anxiety. So, genuinely put yourself in a situation where you need recommendations or ideas. Sit down at the counter at a restaurant and ask the person next to you for a recommendation of their favorite food. Or, go window shopping and stand in front of a window. And when someone walks by, ask their opinion about something you see in the window, right? They can be simple and genuine. Go to a place you genuinely care about and you'll be able to find plenty of openers that are real, right?
Today we were, sometimes you can do kind of silly things and engage with people too. I think part of flirting is that people want to play. They want to have a lighthearted interaction, not all this serious stuff. And after our hike today, Mark Noble showed up. He's a neuroscientist from Rochester and the father of stem cell genetics and, this world famous person. But he's real interested in Team CBT. And by the way, he's coming Tuesday to the group, Angela. If you or any of the people want to come, he has a new brain model for how CBT affects the brain, how Team does, which was cool. But we went to dim sum afterwards and had fun. And then we went and got these, tea, sweet tea things they're like slushies.
Bubble tea. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when we were in there, the last time we were in there, we did shame attacking exercises. And I made Mark sing for these kids. And it was bizarre, but everyone liked it. And so this time there were 3 young Asian people there, a woman and 2 guys. They just ordered their drinks and we were all waiting for our drinks. I said, "Oh, you people, you may have heard of Mark. You've probably seen this fellow on television. He's a famous singing star. Or do you recognize him?" They said, "No, we don't really." I said, "Well, he would like to serenade you now." Now, Mark didn't know that I was going to do this. And then he pretended to sing. He said, "I'm going to sing this 3-minute song in 9 seconds, compressed, and I'm going to do it in total silence." So he said, here we go. We're going to sing, and David's going to help me. And then we pretended to be singing. And then they caught on and they pretended to be singing. And everyone was kind of laughing. And then they called that our kind of green tea Slurpees were ready. But like they bought right into what we were doing, and we were having fun, you see. And they realized we weren't trying to put a move on them or anything like that. It just having lighthearted fun. And the world is filled with magic. And part of the idea is when you get out of your shell and start connecting with people without grabbing onto people, that you can have fun. And that's part of the secret of sex appeal, really, is to interact with people in a kind of fun, lighthearted way. way. And I
Yeah.
kind of like it when you're kind of playing games with people because there's something when you're doing a silly little game like what you said, Angela, it all of a sudden it's a fun, silly thing that you're doing. It's not this,
Yeah.
oh, take me, can we make babies now? I need to get married or whatever. It,
Right.
it puts it in a whole different
Right.
dimension. And that other dimension is kind of where sex appeal happens.
Right. Absolutely. I'm laughing because I wonder if my husband's still listening or not. He'd popped on and complimented me at one point because we should tell a couple stories about meeting Jason then. Because this theme of being playful and not taking it too seriously is really tough for folks, especially I imagine a lot of the people listening today are therapists. And I think in general, we are folks who like deep, meaningful interaction. Right?
Yeah.
And so often we're actually not good at chit chat, lighthearted, surface level stuff because we connect with like depth and vulnerability, right? And I am absolutely that way. Like I want deep, meaningful connections and I don't feel terribly drawn into kind of chit chat gets boring real quickly. Jason said, yep. So he's still listening. So let's tell a Jason story. But given that, I think that the answer to going from chit chat to deeper is to be patient with it, right? That you have every right to have deep, intimate, vulnerable relationships, but you don't have to always have that in your first moment of interaction with someone. So I hope that you'll want to hold on to those deep, meaningful parts, but kind of ease into them, right? So one of the skills on the list that is important is this idea of exiting the interaction early. And that helps us balance that desire to chase and to go deep too quick, right? So when I say exit the interaction early, I literally mean don't be the person at the dinner party who's holding on when the host wants to have you go, right? Don't stick with things beyond the point of fun and entertainment and to the point that everyone's bored and just remembering the end of the night being kind of tedious and boring, right? So this applies whether it's a first casual chat with someone you've approached, like you're on the street asking for a recommendation, you want to keep it brief, right? You want to convey a willingness to move on and to walk away so that they want more, right? It applies if you're at the dinner party with friends. You want your friends to want you to come back. And that means you want to leave before they're sick of you. Right? You want the first date to end on a good note, not on those notes where you're like, oh, what else are we supposed to talk about now? This is so boring, right? We've run out of everything. So you want to have the energy of like when the energy turns towards negative, move on, right? So this worked pretty well with my dear husband, who's again listening. But so Jason and I did meet at a bar. I was on a night of being flirty and I literally pointed at him as he walked in and said to my friend, that guy's really attractive. And then I turned away from him and paid no attention to him. But I sure as hell made sure he'd seen me do that, right? So I made it pretty darn easy on Jason to approach me later because it opened a door for him to come to me later and be like, so what was that about, right? And then I got to be kind of coy and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't pointing at you, right? And it just kind of teasing was the beginning. Well, what happened then is I wasn't ready to be in a serious relationship. I was still having fun, but Jason was this like really cool guy, right? So we met for dinner the next night and I used a couple of the other skills, which we won't have time to get to today, but I kept remembering the exit the interaction early. And the reason it was so important was because I really, really liked him, right? Like I really liked him. And I knew that all of my normal tendencies would be, let's hang out again. When can I see you again? When can I call you? How can I get to know you more, right? So I played it hard. Like I really set limits with it. I would not agree to see him all the time. And it created this really awesome dynamic that even got talked about like in the toasts at our wedding. My sisters were joking that I kept playing the card of, oh, we're just friends. We're just friends. I was totally into him, but I was really holding back because I knew that if I rushed it, I'd probably ruin it. Right? I'd probably come across as like too desperate, too needing to hold on. And so the willingness to let go was really key, right? And it forced him into a role of kind of chasing me more, right? Where he then was the one saying, when can I see you again? And I'd say, oh, and I'd just say it kind of coyly and playfully. I'd say, well, I have a twice a week limit with you. Like, if I've seen you tonight, you got to wait 5 more days because that's just too much for us, right? And he'd laugh. And then, of course, he'd call me the next day and be like, are you sure? What if we go to this really good spot to eat? And I'd be like, oh, I don't know, and I'd just play with it. It was so fun, right, to be able to do it. But genuinely, I think it was the smartest thing I did in our relationship because it slowed us down. It helped us to move at a pace that we really could get to know each other, right? But at the surface level, the initial interactions, that exit is important. So what I teach clients is, do an opener with a time limit and then walk away, but leave yourself in a space that they can approach you later. Right. So let's take this out of a bar and into like a work function. Let's imagine you're at a conference. Okay. And it's like folks are doing that awkward networking thing. They're supposed to move around the room, but everyone's actually just awkwardly standing here with a plate, wishing there was someone to talk to them. So I'm going to approach a group of someone that I would like to connect with. I'm going to use an opener with a false time constraint, and then I'm going to move on, but I'm going to stay in the room, right? And probably, if I really am interested in the person, I'm going to make sure I keep scanning the room, right? That's an eye contact is important to make myself kind of look available and approachable, but I'm not going to linger around that person all day at the conference, right? I'm just going to exit early, and then they need to make the next move of conveying some interest, right? So it puts me in the position of I'm okay. You're welcome to come to me if you want, but I'm not going to follow you around all day and chase you. So that's the combo of some of the, thinking about eye contact, but also really, really working on that idea of exiting early, which I think is the hardest thing for folks to learn. It's the same with text messages and online dating too, right? We have to figure out how to kind of exit, meaning put an end to it. I don't teach hard, fast rules. All the internet will tell you, like, wait 3 days to respond. I think all that's silly. You can't be that rigid with it. But the spirit of it is that we want to convey we still have other things in our life, and we're not desperately waiting around for this person to fulfill all of our needs.
The idea behind this, there's something I wrote about in Intimate Connection called the Burns Rule, but it's been around for thousands of years, and it's probably been around since the origin of the universe. And it's people only want what they can't get, and they never want what they can get. And so I think that's why you're saying, make an early exit, show interest, but make yourself somewhat unavailable, because if you chase the other person, and if you need the other person, you're what they can get, and so you will force them to reject you. Mm-hmm. If as long as you're in the chasing role or the needy role, you're guaranteed to turn other people off. And this not only rule dominates and explains all dating behavior. It's in business and all human interactions, we seem to chase something we can't get, and where there's something we can get, someone who's real available, then you think, oh, that person, he's needy or she's needy. That person's real uninteresting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an art though, because again, we want to be deep and meaningful and connected. And again, I'll reiterate, I think you can, for sure. I think I want that for you too. I surely want that in my own relationships, but we don't have to do that from day one, right? We can ease into that and balance it.
Are you saying people have to learn to play games?
I would never use that language, David. I don't teach game playing.
Is that a yes?
I do teach, sort of, a little bit. Yeah, no, but I don't like to think of it as games, because I don't think I'm asking people to do things that are really manipulative. I think I'm asking them to bring out their best self, right? Their most confident, assured self, and to take some risks. So, but we should take some questions, because I think we have a hard stop at 4 usually, right? So we need to give the audience some time for questions.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a hard stop at 4, but generally we stop at 4, but we can stop and ask questions, or you can go give a couple more kind of your tips. Let me ask a question for the audience. Let's say that you use some kind of opener and time constraint. How do you get from that to more of a a conversation with the person, like what restaurants you like around here? Oh, you like McDonald's? Great. Then what?
Right. Yeah. So the skills that move it along there were developed by this really amazing guy named David Burns,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we call that the David Letterman technique, which we probably need an updated term for that too, because soon the new generations won't know who that is. But the talk show host concept includes a whole skill set of ways that we actually put the spotlight on the other person and get them talking. And so obviously we wouldn't have time to teach them in depth, but to highlight them, it's things like stroking, which really means genuine compliments for the other person, open-ended questions that really take an interest in anything the other person has said, right? And those combo so it's inquiry, right? Which these open-ended questions and stroking primarily that keep the focus on the other person, which is really stellar, especially for the folks who feel kind of anxious talking to new people, because it takes the pressure off us to say wise things. Last month, I went out with, I teach a Thursday morning training group locally for folks in the Bay Area, and we went out and did some flirting practice on the streets downtown here. And there was this, I was, sort of asked to demonstrate this part, like, how do you get someone talking beyond the recommendation? And so this man had walked out of a building just in front of us, and I stopped him and I started with a compliment. My opener was a compliment. I said something like, "Oh, you look like a guy who probably knows all the cool spots because look at your hip shoes," or something like that, right? And he had on these like cool baby blue shoes or something. And he just immediately perked up. He was just like, whoa, like I could tell he was going to be eating out of my hand in a minute. And sure enough, so I just started with, oh yeah, we just need a breakfast spot and we want something kind of cute and hip and local. And he started throwing out ideas, and then I just opened it up. I said, oh, are you like a native here? You seem to really know your way around. And he just starts talking about where he grew up and da-da-da. And he mentioned something about going up to Tahoe, which in California, that's like our beautiful mountain lake area, right? And I just jokingly say, ooh, a friend with a house in Tahoe. Now that's a friend I need, right? And at this point, he blushes and he starts to go, well, if you wanted, well, I mean, maybe. And it's like he was debating whether to ask me to go to Tahoe with him. And at this point, I'm like hiding my wedding ring because it's like worked too well. It's one of these like, oh, this got too successful too quickly. And
watch out, Jason.
The woman in my training group next to me was sort of like flabbergasted with like, oh, this is working really well. So we had a good laugh as we walked away. Then I had to use an exit, right? Because all of a sudden I was in over my head. So I had to use an exit of some compliments and wrapping it up and saying sweetly something about like, oh, I'll let you get on with your day. You're a busy, important person. And, we kind of moved on.
I have a quick story to compliment yours, perhaps. When I hung out with this fellow, Michael, I mean, he also worked in a men's clothing store. He lived with his mother. He rode around on a motor scooter. And yet he was the hottest thing in Palo Alto. Women couldn't really resist him. And so, he was trying to show me what I was doing wrong and what I was doing right. And it was the most amazing transformational experience. But he took me in and he made me buy all these real fancy, beautiful looking clothes. And then also, it's like what you're saying, be positive to the other person, because I was always, being sincere and getting shot down. So I decided to try his thing once, and there was this local bar on University Avenue in Palo Alto, and I determined, I stood next to the door and said to myself, the next woman that comes in, I'm going to make a real nice, compliment.
Uh-huh.
And I'll tell her she has a pretty blouse or something like that. So I was just, I'm going to be real kind of positive and not my nerdy self. And so the next group that came in was a group of Hell's Angels. They just parked their motorcycles and, real mean looking guys. And they had this, I mean, I shouldn't use this language, but this hot babe with them. Am I allowed to say things like that? Or
I don't know, but we'll let you get away with it.
She was like maybe 19 years old, and she was extremely well built, and she was just wearing a t-shirt. a white T-shirt. But I had in my mind I was going to tell her it's a pretty blouse.
Right.
So I said to her, "Oh, that's really a nice blouse that you're wearing," which was totally idiotic. And there are these Hell's Angels there,
Makes sense, right?
she's not realizing what I'm doing. And she
Mm.
walked up to me and she put her arms around me and she started gyrating against me.
Oh, wow.
And she said, "Oh, you're so cute." And then they walked off to the bar. And I thought, wow, that's better than my usual reception. And again, it kind of taught me that there's something really nice about being kind of offbeat and humorous and not taking yourself so seriously. And I kind of think there's a kind of a lightheartedness, don't you think, Angela,
Yeah.
to effective flirting. You're kind of having fun with someone. When you told this guy he had like real cute shoes, I've sometimes told women, you may think this is wrong, Angela, but like if you're flirting with a guy and you're going to give him compliments, you have to tell him something that's not true or it'll be too heavy.
Oh. Mhm.
So if the guy is real handsome, but he looks like he has an IQ of 42, you look into his eyes and you say, there's something about your eyes that are so intelligent. But I'm sure you hear this from women all the time. And of course, he's never heard that because no one even his mother doesn't think he's intelligent. And it's really kind of appealing. And then like, let's say the guy is, has this, seems like he's like owns Google or something. He's some brilliant, genius IQ guy, but he's ugly as sin. You just tell him there's something about your eyes that is so attractive. But I bet you hear this from women all the time. And then you're kind of blowing smoke in his face in a friendly way, and you're playing with him. Mm-hmm. And that somehow is kind of empowering and makes the woman very attractive to that guy. Anyway, that's Burns's lame theory, but
yeah, I always feel mixed. So in the community, folks will call that negs, like finding negative.
That's right.
Or on my sheet, I list teasing gently. That's the hardest for me, David, because I think that it often can be construed as mean spirited if done wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the truth with any of these methods, right? Is that you always say our methods could be a scalpel and hurt if done wrong. So it's the one that I think folks need to use most carefully, right? That they need to,
you're right.
As a way to be respectful. But in the examples you gave, if you genuinely think the person's eyes are beautiful, even though they're not maybe attractive to you otherwise, then great, compliment their eyes. That's very genuine, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's just one that can be really effective and also can be used to hurt if not done well. So like anything, we just want to use caution.
Yeah, it's to be joyful, to be playful with people, to have fun with people. That's what people are yearning for.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, so there can be really, really powerful ones if we can be playful. And, a lot of folks will say, like, I'm just not a playful, silly person. And I think we can all find it to some degree in ourselves if we want to, but again, maybe there's good reasons not to do it. But I think we all have that, we can dig deep to like, gosh, what was I like when I was 7 and silly, when I didn't care so much what people thought of me and there wasn't so much pressure, right? And then
do we have, before we take questions, just based on what you've said so far, we'll probably have to have a part 2 on your flirting tips because we're only about a third of the way through them here.
Yeah, I knew we'd just do a few.
But would we have a homework assignment for shy people who are watching the show, like maybe smile and hello practice?
Yeah. Do you want to explain that or do you want me to?
You go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great intro technique for any type of social discomfort or for anyone who wants to start trying to put themselves out there more. And it's very simple. It's the idea that to do smile and hello practice, you literally are going to walk down the street and do your best to greet people, right? And that means literally make a smile, give a head nod, try a hello or a good morning or a good afternoon. I have folks say all the time, oh, I live in New York City. I could never do this. People would like punch me or something. And I think then they'll go do it and realize actually it's just fine. The worst case that happens is actually that people kind of ignore you, right? That they just don't don't respond to you, and that's fine. You could even tally, how many people give you a positive response, a neutral response, or a negative response. But the idea is just to put yourself out there and try to make that connection with people. And often the data shows that people have a very positive response, and you notice actually other folks feel kind of brightened almost by having been greeted. They feel kind of seen and acknowledged, and it can have a really nice impact for others too. So it'd be a great exercise for those of you who find maybe some of these others to be too much or overwhelming. It would be to start with smile and hello.
And so should they say specifically, do they have the assignment to smile and say hello to 10 strangers every day for the next week?
Yeah, that's great, David. Yeah, that'd be a great idea.
When I did it, I was so anxious. I started out because I thought I couldn't smile. I had a smiling phobia. I used to have a camera phobia too. I had all kinds of social anxiety. So I started out by smiling and saying hello to inanimate objects. Just like a tree or a fence or something like that.
Yeah.
And then once I got used to that, I started smiling and saying hello to animals. And dogs are really good because they'll lick your face. They're very non-judgmental. And then I started, hi, hello, all you. I can do it now. And you're smiling and saying hello to strangers. And it's extraordinarily challenging to shy people, but it's a tremendously helpful practice technique, a good first step.
Yeah, it's really important. Yeah, it's a great one, and a great one to assign to clients for those of you who are therapists. So, yeah. Well, I don't actually see a lot of questions coming up in the box, although I'm not the expert of the comment box. So maybe folks don't have specific questions, and we should maybe honor the time. But of course, I'd be happy to come back, or if folks want to learn more. I mean, there's been talk that I should do like a 2-hour webinar or something for Feeling Good Institute on these skills. So that might be coming down the road if there's interest, or if folks want to hear more.
But more than 2 hours, I'd say do a 3-hour.
Yeah, 3-hour one, okay.
You need the time. But we have Kathy, Q&A here. Kathy Leffler, I told my boss he looks good in his blue shirt. Was that inappropriate flirting? And there is a correct answer to this wonderful question, and Angela will now state what the correct answer is.
I don't know the correct answer. Probably the correct answer is there's no such thing as inappropriate flirting, or I don't know. What do you think, David? What is the correct answer?
I don't know either, but I think it can be nice to flirt all the time, especially if you don't mean it, and if you're not trying to lead the person into some kind of an inappropriate relationship. Part of flirting is being kind of lighthearted and not taking everything so seriously, and it can empower you to be flirtatious toward other people, and other people like it. It kind of puts you in control, and half the time I don't know what I'm talking about, but I would say to you, it sounds good to my ear.
Yeah.
For what that's worth. Let's see if there's some more.
Yeah, and I think genuine compliments are just always a great part of our universe, right? I think we could all do better at giving genuine compliments to people, whether we're flirting with them or just being kind human beings. So I love compliments being tossed around, and wish we all did it more.
When I was at the VA hospital in Philadelphia doing my research, I had to put a grant in.
Mm-hmm.
And this fellow in the VA hospital says, this is a very passive-aggressive system. Mm-hmm. And your grant will get clogged up with someone named so-and-so, this woman. And everyone kind of hates her because she's hostile toward everybody.
Mm-hmm.
However, she loves chocolates. And if you want to give her some chocolates, it's kind of like bribery, and if you didn't want to do it, no one would blame you, but that's the way to get your grant through the VA system.
Wow.
And so I not only found out her favorite kind of chocolates, I got a box of chocolates, and then I told her, I just threw a whole bunch of compliments at her.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that you really run the VA, and what a tremendously important job that you do, and I've heard some really nice things about you. And within 3 days, my grant was approved. And but it was just kind of, I was being halfway a little fake, but she really loved it. She probably hadn't heard a good word. She probably did have a bad interpersonal skills, and it can be just really nice to to send some happiness in somebody's direction.
Yeah.
And then I genuinely, every time I saw her, she was so happy to see me, and I always like gave her some nice compliments, and it was just a really a great interaction. So I would say that could be another assignment is throw out 10 compliments a day to people.
Make them genuine. You'll feel great about them. They'll feel great, right? So
yeah, except my point of view is if they're not genuine, they'll be 4 times more effective.
More powerful, yeah.
And I'm not supposed to say that because it sounds politically incorrect. But if you're kind of playing with somebody, I was treating this overly serious attorney. Oh, we're gone over overtime. But I told her she hadn't had a date. She was a good looking woman, but she was kind of serious and paranoid. And there was this cute guy, she said, that she kept seeing in the elevator, and who was also an attorney, but she was anxious. And I said, well, why don't you just compliment him on his tie, and then imagine him defending a case in court in his underpants, because that image made her laugh. So she did that. She went up and said, oh, you have such a cute tie on today. And then she thought of that and she started giggling. And he said, well, what are you laughing about? And she said, I don't know. There's just something seeing you just makes me feel kind of happy. And then he said, well, let's have coffee after work. And then they started dating. So again, there's something about, being kind of lighthearted.
Really, yeah. Yeah, it really helps. So great. Well, it was fun. If folks want to hear more, I guess I can give my email address if it's helpful, or you can find me through the Feeling Good Institute webpage. It's just feelinggoodinstitute.com. But yeah, I'm happy to consult if you're working on this with patients, or if you're interested in learning more tips and techniques. And we'll post on Facebook if we are going to put together a 2 or 3 hour webinar just on this topic. So, and
is there a way we can post your 12 or 13?
Yeah, do you think it's good enough to share broadly like that, David? I always feel like
that's why we should post it. We're always taking ourselves too seriously.
Great, good point.
Things have to be too good, right?
Yeah.
So why don't we post this? Maybe Lisa Kelly can post it for us. I don't know how to, or maybe you would know how.
Yeah, I don't know how, but I'm sure we'll figure that out. Yeah, and I'm happy to share it. I'll just I'll let go of my ego around it and let it be
to practice. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds fun.
Well,
awesome.
Well, thanks everyone
for
People
listening.
said they just loved what you're doing, Angela. They want the webinar. Yes, Angela, come back. For questions too, says Bernie, and Craig missed the first 15 minutes and wants to hear all about it. And yeah. Okay, well, we're going to stop. It's 10 after 4, so we don't want to hang anybody up. But I want to thank you. Thank you, Angela. I just think you did a great job. You're awesome, as you always are. And thank you, Jason, for joining us
for tolerating.
Yeah.
He's a trooper. That's one reason I like him. He flirts well, too, so.
Yeah, awesome. Well,
okay. Take care, everyone.
End the broadcast.
Okay, take care, everyone.